We even have an original.
The Battle of Valcour, a turning point in the war for independence. Drum roll, please. Fife and drums. From 1776 to 2001. Beautiful sunshiny day on the 12th day of August. I got Frank Papps, the old captain, with me. How are you, Frank?
Excellent, Gordy, excellent.
Just so great to be down here by Lake Champlain. The Valcour, the old Valcour boathouse, which is a piece of history all by itself.
Oh yes, this is the original Port Jackson. This was the first port on Lake Champlain, and a very successful commercial port.
Isn't it great? And it's
just across where Cal is looking is beautiful Valcour Island, a site where the Royal Savage met her untimely end. And 1776, 225 years ago, was America's ultimate act of defiance to tell the British that no, we're not going to be British subjects. And it happened right here where we're standing.
An incredible lake that we live along. You and I have said that for such a long time. We've tried to focus on the history through the years. Your audience out there today for our little corner has heard a lot lately about the Battle of Plattsburgh. But there is a group, a stalwart, strong group that is promoting the value of retaining the history of the Battle of Valcour, and you're very much involved with it.
Well, it was an idea that was started by my chef on the Juniper, Billy Reed, and it made us aware that it was the 225th anniversary of the Battle of Valcour, and truthfully speaking, if it hadn't have been for the Battle of Valcour, there wouldn't have been a Battle of Plattsburgh.
Well, that's why when we say turning point, we're not kidding.
No, this was the fulcrum. This is where it happened. And we didn't win the battle. I mean, we were hopelessly outgunned, outnumbered, outclassed. But there's one thing that we had was patriots that were brave, incredible brave soldiers and sailors that stood to the last and held the British off. And by the time the British were ready to invade us again, we were strong enough to repel them.
Let's talk about this little organization that you formed to perpetuate this piece of history.
Well, we put together a committee, Roger Harwood, Bill Reed, Bill Rowe, Bill Miller, myself, Craig Russell, a group of men. I hope I'm not forgetting the John Tompkins from the Historical Society and his assistant. All those people got together. We met back in March and said, what can we do to get this visible, the Battle of Valcour, in people's minds? And it's working very, very well.
So you meet, organize. I know the actual battle was in October, but you're getting started early this year.
Arnold was starting to put his ragtag fleet together. I mean, he had conscripted felons, he had militia, he had farmers, he had people that were patriots. That was his navy. And he's up against a British navy that was seasoned and knew how to fight from a ship, and these men didn't know, but they had the patriotism and the American ingenuity to do it. And Arnold put his fleet together, and he was up at Isle La Motte on October 12th to be accurate about it. And he knew it was going to happen. And we felt that by celebrating on August 12th, that we would give people a chance while the weather is good to get together and commemorate these gallant patriots of 225 years ago.
It might be pure speculation on my part, but this day, August 12th, will probably be a better day meteorologically than October 12th would be. So.
Well, it would be difficult standing here with a scarf wrapped around our mouth as the winter winds were starting to blow.
It seems like one year we went out on one of your little boats when the winds were blowing, and we came back and everybody had bronchitis and the flu and seven shades of who knows what. But hey, we'll do anything for the sake of history.
Indeed.
This has got to be exciting for you. What are you planning today for the public down here?
Well, we've got Ed Scollin, who was the head of the Valcour Bay project, and he's got a PowerPoint projection with underwater videos and information on the exploded cannon. Now, Ed did some incredible homework on this.
Did he?
There was, in the American warship New York had a cannon explode. Well, back in those days, the casting of the cannon wasn't that much of a science, and this had a flaw in it. And when it exploded, the back end blew apart and it killed the man that was firing the cannon. Ed found his grave in Massachusetts and went out and got a rubbing of the gravestone. We'll see that inside.
Wow.
Where his widow put the epitaph on where he got killed in the Battle of Valcour from an exploded cannon. And that cannon, of course, was raised on July 2nd. And Ed has done further projects on the Battle of Valcour Bay. We've also got our own cannons. In just a second, Bill Rowe, come over just a minute, please. The finale, the grand finale, like they have in a fireworks display, is being orchestrated by our master cannoneer, Bill Rowe.
How are you, William?
How are you doing?
Great to see you, my friend. I see you're in good voice today.
Well, actually, I've got my megaphone out there.
Oh, you do?
With this wind, Gordy, you know what voice is.
Oh.
It's worth saving at any cost.
Bill and I commiserated, I don't know how many years ago.
Boy.
He called me up when I was about to have a throat operation when my voice was going and his voice had gone and came back. And then you went through that a couple of times, and here we are. Old soldiers,
I'm a
3
lot
in a row.
older than you, Mr. Little.
What are you going to do today, my friend?
Well, actually, during the day, we'll probably be firing probably every hour on the half hour. The wirery, unfortunately, said they were only going to fire a dusk salvo, but we've been donated some powder by Northern Insuring.
I heard about that.
So every hour on the half hour,
Send it off, baby.
we will be firing.
There will be no powder left unburned.
I love it.
Well said.
Who said that? Captain
In
Frank
fact,
Bass.
we're just going to get ready for a precise noon shot to open the ceremonies.
Oh, 11:48. His
that's
says
precisely.
11:51.
Mine
Close.
says Wednesday.
We don't know what year. Good luck. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Here's a guy that's been associated with
Yes,
Lake Champlain
Bill.
for as long as we can remember.
Indeed, and he's always supported Lake Champlain and the history and respected it and done what he could to promote it. He's an outstanding gentleman.
I got to tell you something that'll please you because it pleased me. Kay and I decided to take our first walk on that new bike path down behind the old base that opened up a while back. We were walking last night and a couple went by on their bicycles, and I could see that double take, the lady, when I said hello. They came racing back with their bikes. Mr. Little, we watch your television show all the time. I've been up here a year and a half from Pennsylvania. And the husband's name, who is Wayne King, his wife's name is Patty from Pennsylvania. They met on the internet, one of those beautiful stories, and got married and live up here. And he says, you're my wife's favorite celebrity, all that historical stuff. And the minute we stopped and talked, she said, we learned so much about history on the Juniper.
Well, that
Taking
makes me
our
feel
little
happy.
trips around Lake Champlain and hearing Frank Pabst. She says, one night we sat right next to the speaker, and the speaker went out, and we were so frustrated, so we went and sat by another speaker, and they listened to your whole spiel. Did you ever do it the same way twice?
No, because we usually did it live, and each time there's another idea crosses your mind. It's fundamentally the same, but there's different ways of presenting it, and it's such an exciting history when you realize that the whole pivot point of this becoming a country happened here at Valcour and at the anchor that the Confiance lost. Without the anchor, the battle was lost, and it certainly was. Our country began right here on Lake Champlain in the 10-mile stretch between here and Plattsburgh Bay.
It's truly amazing because Lake Champlain was named, of course, for Samuel de Champlain, who took a little trip through these parts in 1609. And he's got a monument in his honor. He's got a street in Plattsburgh named after him, and lots of things like hotels and
Ferry.
whatever, and a ferry.
Yeah.
And the
Town.
town of Champlain. Oh, listen to Calvin.
Another voice heard from.
Another voice heard from the Ridge Road at Hometown Cable. Of course. Look at the gulls out there in the lake behind Calvin. 50
Those are the
million
perch
birds.
pigeons.
Perch pigeons.
Yeah,
What a
there's
beautiful.
probably a school of perch right under those gulls.
Is that-
They're coming in for bait.
Is that what they do?
Yeah.
Is this, has it been this rough a lot of the summer?
No, it's been a relatively calm summer, relatively beautiful. It's been probably one of the better summers, and I sincerely regret not being able to run the Juniper and cool people off in this weather that we've
Well,
had.
you know, that's a whole nother story. But
Oh, indeed
as
it
our
is.
viewers probably know, Frank Pabst was the captain of our beloved Juniper for how many years?
25 years.
25 years, a quarter of a century, and he was interested in the history of the North Country almost from the day he set foot in Essex County, right?
That's correct.
Many,
That's
many,
correct.
many years ago.
The first cannonball that I held in my hand and realized that 200 years ago, a human being loaded this cannonball in the defense of our country. It's quite a psychological rush when you get right down to it.
How can you help but be affected when you hold a piece of history in your hand?
That's it. And I was the first human being to touch it in 200 years.
Yeah, and isn't that fantastic?
Well, that was back in the 60s, so it was a little less than 200 years.
Frank was involved in so many things, and I don't mind reiterating, we've done several interviews with Frank on television and many on the radio previous to that. But we were together in the 1960s when a couple of cannon were brought out of Lake Champlain. Mention that
Indeed.
to our audience.
Well, in 1759, a French fleet was sailing north on Lake Champlain with the British squadron in hot pursuit. They knew their fate was sealed if the British caught them, and they knew certainly they would catch them because their vessels were faster. They hauled in by Cliff Haven, and they unloaded all the ordnance that they couldn't carry overland. And they disposed of these two cannons. We located them. They were located by two young lads that were chasing a fish. They had us haul them out of the water, and it was a bit of controversy for about 18 years. But the cannons were 1,600 pounds apiece. They were cast of bronze. They were perfect. The George Rex emblem was on them.
Just beautiful.
One today resides up at Clinton Community College. The other one is at the Fort St. Frederick down at Crown Point in the Interpretive Center, and a spectacular piece of North Country history. Along with the cannons, five anchors, 15 muskets, 2 broken sabers, and a 2-pound swivel gun that had been stopped and spiked. This 2-pound swivel gun, because it was stopped and spiked, allowed us to remove the wooden plug from the muzzle. And when the plug was removed, the charge, the ball, everything was dry and intact.
Isn't
200 years
that
underwater.
Amazing.
Incredible.
So many great things involved on this lake, on top of the lake and now under the lake.
Well,
Frank was involved in diving Lake Champlain for a long time and started a group called the Wreck Raiders. How many years ago?
Well, that was actually Lake Champlain Historical Research Club, but nobody could remember the name after a little bit, so the Wreck Raiders was shortened to. Now, I recall taking you underwater off the end of the breakwater one time.
Fantastic. I think our water's clearer today than it was back then, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It's the zebra mussels are partially to thank for it. We condemn them for many things, but they do filter copious quantities of water. Today, though, here at Valcour, we have the privilege of having Hudson Haglund, the son of Lorenzo Haglund, who raised the Philadelphia and the Royal Savage. He is one of our guest speakers, along with a film of the Philadelphia being raised. We're also offering newspapers of the raising of the Philadelphia. It was printed in 1935. The newspapers have a complete story of the raising of the Philadelphia. Stan Ransom, the Connecticut peddler, is going to be here, our troubadour. He's going to be doing music of the Revolutionary period.
He's the best.
Russ Bellico, the author of Sail and Steam in the Mountains, is going to be here signing his new book, the revised edition of Sail and Steam in the Mountains. It's going to be a spectacular day with a cannon salute and a Rolling Thunder cannon display. It'll be incredible. It's all happening here.
In about 5 minutes at 12 noon, the first firing is going to take place.
Indeed it will.
I don't know how Calvin's going to hold the camera and his ears at the same time, but we'll see if we can catch him in a twitch, all right?
Sounds like an idea.
Sounds like a great day. Frank, we'll talk to you again before we leave.
Look forward to it. Take care.
We're gearing up for the first cannon firing of the day. Bill Rowe has his megaphone as promised. And throughout the day, those people, our Canadian visitors on boats, are going to be ducking, I think, maybe on Lake Champlain, wondering if we're firing at them from the Valcour boathouse. A beautiful spot on this 12th day of August 2001. Absolutely incredible day, near 81 degrees. And We have reenactors here, we've got singers, we've got historians, we've got divers. We've got a lot of people interested in the role that the Battle of Plattsburgh played in the freedom of our nation, where Benedict Arnold with his makeshift fleet of gondolas and galleys delayed the British advance down the Lake Champlain-Hudson River corridor just long enough to suspend British operations for that year. And as Frank told us, this little battle, lost under great courage and British superiority, caused the British to abandon their assault on Fort Ticonderoga for that year, and in turn caused the Battle of Saratoga the next year and the turning point of the war in the Americans' favor. There are a number of websites I've discovered on the Battle of Valcour. The first one that I looked at is very interesting because it lists all ships involved. It's called Orders of Battle, Valcour Island, October 11th through the 13th, 1776. And it lists British forces like the Inflexible, the Maria, the Carleton, the Thunderer, a long list of gunboats and longboats, and the American forces under Arnold included, of course, the Royal Savage, which you've heard so much about. The Revenge, Liberty, the Enterprise, New Haven, Providence, Boston, Spitfire, Philadelphia, another very famous American ship, the Connecticut, Jersey, New York, Lee, Trumbull, Congress, Washington, Gates, and more. Bill is getting us ready. Let's see if we can not jump. Oh, is that cool or what? That wasn't too bad. Not too bad at all.
Reminiscent of a program we did down here with Bob Venn when the Philadelphia 2 visited. And we were on board the Philadelphia 2 when they fired the cannon. And it was about 30 seconds before you could get any sound out of my microphone.
That one wasn't too bad that time, was it?
No, we're far enough away.
Oh, it's truly amazing. And you know, it's a great pleasure for Hometown Cable, Calvin Castine on the camera, and me, Gordy Little, to be part of these reenactments, these pieces of history. We do want to pay a lot of attention to the memory of the Battle of Valcour because of its importance, as well as the Battle of Plattsburgh. And hopefully when we get a new interpretive center, there will be information connected with both. It's great to have Hudson Haglund here today because his father was so instrumental in the raising of the Royal Savage and the Philadelphia. That's a very interesting boat going by out there in Lake Champlain. The cut of the sails, at first I thought they were smaller than they are. There's really quite a bit of canvas there. I don't know, of those of you who don't live near Lake Champlain, maybe this will be an incentive for some of our viewers to come and visit us sometime. We really believe with real bias, because we've lived here so long, that this is one of the most fantastic places on earth. And if this doesn't prove it to you today, then I don't know what possibly could. We'll mention also that there are a number of displays going on inside here today, so if those people who were here talk to you about it, you'll feel bad because you didn't visit it. But before we finish with our little hour and a half or 2 hour presentation on our little corner, I think you will begin to get a little better idea on what the Battle of Valcour was all about. I see another cannon being brought out. There are a number of cannon which will be on display here. There are several of them up there. A bit later on, perhaps we'll get some close-up pictures, and perhaps more than once before this show is finished, you will be hearing a big boom like you heard just a few moments ago, as we're reenacting and recapitulating the events that led up through, including, and after the Battle of Valcour, which began in October 1776. When we talked to Captain Frank a few minutes ago, he mentioned that Billy Reed was very much involved in this Valcour project. We've talked to Billy lots of time. He's got a passion for history,
Indeed, I do.
Thank you for inviting us down here today, my friend.
Well, yes, here we are at Port Jackson celebrating the most important thing that's ever happened in Peru, the Battle of Valcour. And I grew up in this area, but it wasn't until a few years ago that I found out that this site was called Port Jackson, and it's one terminus of the military turnpike. It seems like this is the first spot where if you turn inland from the lake, you can reach the Great Lakes without climbing a mountain. And there the military turnpike came into being. And for years, this spot was the steamship pier of Peru. And the legend is that a lot of the iron ore and timber that created the early growth in New York City came from the Adirondacks right off of this pier. And this property was owned by Mr. Sibley, who was the congressman from Pennsylvania, I believe, and he was the brother of the gal whose Sibley Hall at Plattsburgh State was named after. And he privatized the area, and in return to the town of Peru, he gave them what's now Peru Dock, as I understand it. But anyway, Port Jackson, the boathouse predates the rebuild of the mansion up there. The old stone mansion was rebuilt in around 1912, but the boathouse is dated back in the 19th century, I believe. Donald Thibodeau, who used to be the caretaker here, told me years ago, before the big fire that destroyed the main house, that there was a huge smokehouse up behind the main house that had a copper, it was a copper body, but it was wood around it. And you could go up twin stairways that went around, and each stairway topped, and there were 2 rooms and 4 pie-shaped bunks in each of the 4 rooms. There were 16 men could sleep above the smokehouse here, and there's so much history here. And
Every square inch of land, it seems,
Really?
along this lake is steeped in history. And isn't
Really
it fun
is.
to delve into it?
It really is, and that's why we're here today, is to celebrate this great event. And actually, you know, the Battle of Valcour at this spot occurred on October 11th, 1776, but we're celebrating it here on August 12th so that we can all be warm and happy. And
We discussed that with Captain Frank. Those of us who are getting old need that kind of thing. Actually, it's been a pretty darn nice summer here on Lake Champlain.
real nice.
We're finally getting some more tourists back in the area. A lot of our Canadian friends are coming back, and it's good. My wife and I took a ride around down in the city of Plattsburgh last night, and it's great to see a little new life being reinfused into this
and
area.
reappreciating the historic things that happened along here is only going to increase the amount of tourism we get. You know, it's encouraging to me too.
You know, I want to point out now, and maybe several times before our program is finished, how important your little organization is to keeping the memory of the Battle of Valcour alive, and to invite other people who have an interest in history here to join your group. How would they do that if they want to?
Well, the Cove Committee was kind of an ad hoc thing that Captain Frank put together. But according to things that have happened recently, I think the best way for local people to find a voice and to find out information is to join the Clinton County Historic Society.
That's a good idea.
And of course, that would encompass our Battle of Valcour interests, but of course the BOPA, the Battle of Plattsburgh Association, or the Weekend Group, that's all getting kind of confusing lately, but it seems like you got to join up and make your thoughts known. You know, one thing I have, Gordy, that nobody else has is a tattoo of the Royal Savage
Oh, I forgot about that.
on my belly here.
I think that's beautiful.
That boat's growing every year.
Yes, it is. You'll notice here's the Valcour Island. This is after the Royal Savage went out and lured the British fleet in. We have broken masts and a broken bowsprit. But there's my tribute to Benedict Arnold. And
Very good. Who did that one?
That was Vincent Trecosi on Clinton Street did that for me, and puts my Frank says if I ever lose weight, it'll be the Royal Savage dinghy, but I don't think that'll ever happen.
That's pretty good when you cultivate a stomach that size just to put a big tattoo on it.
America's first battleship.
Oh,
it was on the chest, but it
I
fell.
just love it. As we're talking to you, it's about 10 minutes after 12 on the 12th day of August 2001, and the crowd is growing and everybody loves it down here. This is such a neat spot, isn't it?
Well, what a good thing it was that the College Ancillary Services donated the fee. They waived the fee for us today, so that we're able to use it as a public venue, and I think it's going to be one heck of a party.
I think it's going to be just great, and we'll continue this party celebrating the memory of the Battle of Valcour.
Oh boy.
I don't know if they're giving a prize to the person who came the greatest distance here today, but we've got a guy that came from Staten Island.
Yeah.
Tom, what's the last name?
Lawrence.
Glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
Have you been to Lake Champlain before?
I was here 1 month ago. I came up to see what Valcour Island looked like. I read about it 5 years ago and tried to imagine what it was like. And it's nothing like what I
It's
imagined.
way better in person. This is such a neat place.
That's for sure.
We've been here for a long time, Calvin and I, and Captain Frank Pabst and all the folks here, and we kind of think they got a good thing going for them, trying to retrieve information that's long been lost about this very important battle in the Revolutionary War.
Benedict Arnold's my hero. I think that we'd all be British subjects if it weren't for him.
That's the bottom line, Thomas.
Right.
So how does a guy from Staten Island get interested in the Battle of Valcour?
I read the book by Willard Stern Randall, Benedict Arnold, Patriot and Traitor. I couldn't put it down.
It's one of many books that have been written about Benedict Arnold in that time period, and there'll be more. You're writing a book, but not about that, you said.
Not about that, no. I'm interested in 19th century Brooklyn, how it developed.
It was and is a pretty special place, huh?
Yeah, I lived in Brooklyn for 15 years. I'm living in Staten Island now, and anyway, I got real interested in how South Brooklyn developed. That's the area that's now Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, and Red Hook.
Oh, yeah.
And I got interested in a guy who was a land speculator, and I have transcribed his deeds and mortgages for 30 years.
No kidding.
And I want to see if I can make a story out of his documents, among other things, and kind of put it into the history of Brooklyn. Have a lot of interesting maps and pictures.
It's an ambitious project, you know.
Well, there's a market there. It's thriving, a lot of young, wealthy, professional people living in that neighborhood. There'll be a market for that, I think.
Brooklyn, tremendous. No matter where you go, you're going to find there's interesting history. But Brooklyn, my history with Brooklyn goes back well over 60 years as a very small child going to Coney Island every other weekend.
Right. So you know a little bit of
There's
Brooklyn.
been quite a bit of history on the Discovery Channel, the Travel Channel, and other channels on the cable about the history of Coney Island.
Right.
That goes way back a long ways. But Brooklyn is a pretty fun place.
I got interested in the Battle of Brooklyn, too.
Yeah.
I read a book by John Gallagher. I couldn't put that one down either.
Gentlemen, Mr. Scullen is going to give his presentation as soon as everybody gets inside.
Thank you so much
Well,
for
you're
being
very
with us.
welcome.
Have fun here today, and good luck with the book.
Thanks.
Dog on his diving.
This would be a good time for that poem, The Wind She Blow on Lac Champlain, and then she blows some more. On the 12th day of August 2001, it's brisk down here, about 18 to 20 miles an hour, I would say, maybe a little more. Hi, who are you?
My name's Chick Hill,
Chick, where are you from?
Willsboro.
What? We came down here to see these cannon. We heard it when it touched off at noon. That was pretty decent.
Well, that was one of the smaller ones, actually. The bore on that one's 1.5 inches. The one I've got set up now is 4¼ inches. That should make a little bit more noise.
I love it. Are these all your cannon?
No, I have about 4 of them here, and the others belong to individuals. Bill Miller has the one on the trailer, and the others belong to other people.
Oh, tell me a little bit about your history and your connection with this kind of stuff.
Well, I got into the artillery about 1976, not because of the bicentennial or anything. I just happened to get into buckskinning at the time, and I was enamored with black powder artillery, and I built a little field carriage, field piece over there, and then went on to build the other 2 mortars and the cohorn, and just to make noise with mostly. And then we started shooting in competition, and it went on for a while, and then I got out of it. And Bill Miller came up to me with his cannon and said, would you help me with this?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I brought them all out of storage, and we started making noise again.
Isn't that fun? That field piece, how long did that take you?
Well, actually, that wasn't too awful long. I had access to a machine shop and a good wood shop, and it didn't. I think the longest part of the whole thing was ordering the wheels from somebody else. And,
Really?
Yeah, it took longer to get those and to make the rest of the carriage and the gun. But at the time, back in '76, I guess, it was about $500 to build it, and probably today it would be about $2,000.
It's a conversation piece.
Well, it's a nice little gun. It looks nice, and it makes a nice report when I fire it. For the size of the gun, it makes quite a lot of noise.
So you own how many now?
Just those 4 that are there. The three mortars and the small field piece.
Do you go around to fairs or?
No, we used to go to artillery shoots. They used to have them all over the United States, and they still do, for that matter. We used to go to Hague, down at Ticonderoga. They probably still have one there, but I haven't shot in competition for about 10 years, so I don't know. But we used to go to Waterville, Peterborough, New Hampshire, and down in Massachusetts, and all over the place. And there's a bunch of nuts out there like me that like to shoot and make noise.
What would competition? What would that be like? How would you compete?
Well, cannon competition is about 400 yards, and it's at very, very large bullseye targets. The mortar competition is a little different. The mortars shoot up and are designed to go up over things and drop in, so we put line circles on the ground about 200 yards away and try to drop them into the center of the line target. And it's reasonably accurate. With the big mortar there, I hit a chair at 600 yards.
Come on!
Really?
that had to be first prize.
Well, it was, but I never got the prize. So that was down in Saratoga, and I never got the prize for it.
I hope it wasn't a good chair.
No.
I imagine it did a number on it.
Yeah, I'll put a hole in it. Pretty big.
That's pretty neat. You know, I'm sure a lot of our viewers have no idea that there is competition like this.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. People, come to something like this and they see a few guns and they think that's all that ever happens with the cannons. But there is actually competition around the country, and there's an awful lot of people out there like me that do it. There's a magazine that comes out quarterly. It's called The Artilleryman, and it's published in Tunbridge. And it is nothing but black powder cannons, muzzle-loading cannons, and all the events around the country, all the people that you need to get in touch with if you're going to be doing it, parts, equipment, anything you want to know, you can get out of this magazine or find a source in the magazine for whatever it is you need. And it's pretty interesting. They have articles on various shoots, they have articles on how-tos, and all that sort of thing. And there's a company in South Bend, Indiana called South Bend Replicas that reproduces most of the full-scale ordnance pieces for all of the national parks and that sort of thing.
Wow.
And they'll sell direct to the public. There's no federal laws against cannons. They're not considered.
There aren't. That's very interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. There are a few states that regulate them, but for the most part, there's no problem with them. You don't need a special license or anything else. The biggest problem with it is if you have big guns, you transport a lot of powder, you need to have a magazine that's safe. Other than that,
there's no licensing in New York at all.
No licensing required.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Are there any adults or any kids viewing this program out there today who don't love to see things go bang?
Oh man, I'll tell you.
I mean, there's a kick about it.
Sure, that's why we have fireworks on the 4th of July and every other chance we get.
But we've talked to some experts on various kinds of military ordnance back for hundreds of years, and what I like to point out for our viewers is that during the Battle of Valcour and later in the Battle of Plattsburgh, there was some pretty powerful stuff around those days. People are used to modern atomic weapons and the large cannon of war, artillery on ships and planes and so on today. but they had some firepower back in the 17 and 1800s, didn't they?
They certainly did. And this mortar that I just set up has a 4 1/4 inch bore in it, which is about equivalent to a 12-pounder from that period of time. And when this gun goes off, it'll give you a fair idea of what those guns sounded like. Unfortunately, I can't actually shoot around today. There's boats out here.
I said the guys in the sailboats are going to start ducking you after a while.
It's fairly impressive. We fired a couple the other night off of Bill Rowe's backyard out here into the bay, and there were no boats around or anything, but there were some people that were fairly impressed by it. We can shoot it out. Well, you see the little island out there?
Yes, Gardner Island.
I can put one on that island.
You gotta be kidding.
No problem.
With that one right there?
That one right there.
No, there's a little technology involved there. You don't just fire that sucker and hope.
Well, I have a sight that I use in competition, and I know what powder charge I want to use for a given yardage for the competition. When you're dealing with a shot that far out, you have to play windage. I mean, on a day like today, I'd have to shoot towards Willsboro in order to get it to land on.
That's called a curveball,
yeah,
baby.
Just about. Yeah. But it can be done, and the distance is there. I can do 2.5 miles with that gun right there.
Well, I'm sure there are many young people and older folks like myself viewing this today who have no idea how much was involved, how much learning was involved for one ship even to hit another ship from 600 yards away.
Well, they were shooting at least that, and sometimes more. But you have to remember that those people shot those guns all the time. They were very familiar with their trajectories and their power and the amount of powder required for a given type of shot that they were using and all of that. And they did practice drills all the time. They had the money available, the powder available. These were government people that had lots of things, lots of money they could throw away at things, and they didn't have to worry about burning up powder. I go to a shoot with the big mortar and shoot up maybe 7 pounds in a day, and that's pretty expensive. That's $75, $80 worth of powder.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why we ought to be glad that somebody donated 100 pounds for today, right?
They donated $100 worth. I don't know.
$100. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's, if they're paying about $10 a pound, that's 10 pounds of powder, and
wow.
That'll take care of the guns for today, and that'll probably be about it. Depends on how much shooting we do. I mean, in competition, I shoot 5-round volleys, and we shoot them every half hour. So,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and I use about up to a quarter pound of powder in the competition. So that's 4 shots. I use 1.25 pounds for one volley, and every half hour I'm using 1.25 pounds. So figure that out over a few hours. You've spent a lot of money on powder.
Now, do you have to tie all these down? Are they hooked onto something, or just the sheer weight of them on the recoil?
You may see the carriage slide back slightly. The angle that I have the mortar at right now is actually a fairly low angle for a mortar. Mortars tend to shoot much higher angles,
really?
going over ramparts and that sort of thing. And the shells that they used to shoot in these had explosive charges in them, so that when they went up and came down, they could time them with a wooden fuse setup that they had in them. And they could make them go off in the air and throw shrapnel down, or they could let them hit and go off, or that sort of thing. So there were some, angled changes for distance and angle changes for the type of shell that they were shooting and all of that, and what they were trying to hit. But for the most part, they were much higher angles than I've got that set at.
So the force would be back down into the ground.
It's pretty much straight down. That gun, the way it's set up right now, might slide a little bit back when I fire it, but it won't be significant.
It's not going to jump right off the ground.
The field carriage with the wheels on it, even with a blank charge, will roll back.
Really?
Oh yeah. And they expected that, and they set up they had wheel chocks that they would set in front of the gun, so that as soon as it recoiled, they could wheel right back up to the wheel chocks. They knew they were right back in the same battery position, and they didn't have to worry about their level of the gun and all that. They were already set up to do it. So that was a little easier to manipulate the wheel guns than it is with these mortars. The mortars that one weighs 180 pounds. It's a 2-man mortar. You can't move it around.
Is it really 180 pounds?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Well, it's a solid oak carriage and a steel barrel and all bronze furniture on it, and it's a hefty gun. And then there's 180 pounds of rounds I take with it. They consist of juice cans full of concrete. So,
That's amazing. Now, we watched you loading it, but we didn't watch you carefully. What is that process involved in loading that?
well, in this particular case, where I'm not shooting a round, I shoot as what's called a sand round, which with a mortar, it has a chamber at the bottom. And it's not like a normal cannon barrel where you can make a noise even if you don't have a wad in the thing. You have to put some sort of a heavy wad in the bore so that it makes a noise. And in this case, I'm using sand, which is nice and heavy, and it will allow the charge to fully burn and make a nice boom. But once it comes out of the barrel, it dissipates almost instantly, so that there's no round going out to hurt anybody. It just makes quite a bit of sand rain, and that. But
There's a seagull looking down the barrel at that moment.
actually,
You liable to take a vacation, or at least be hard of hearing for about a week.
yeah, if he were low enough. But actually, the sand dissipates so quickly. It's unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, I'd say 75 or 80 feet up. It's
No
gone.
kidding.
Nothing to it. It's all, it's like shotgun shot. Shotgun doesn't go very far because it spreads out and all of the energy is dissipated. It's the same kind of an effect.
Chick, are you interested in history or just the history of this kind of ordnance?
Well, I've been interested in the historical aspect of it in previous years. I've gotten out of the whole thing pretty much until Bill got me involved with this particular thing. Right now, I hadn't done anything for about 10 years.
You're all kidding.
Guns have been in storage, and I haven't done anything. And they were up for sale at one point, and didn't get any buyers. So, I'm
So you're
stuck
back
with-
into it again.
Well, I just dragged them out for this thing here. I don't think I'll be doing it every 5 minutes.
I love it. Are you originally from Willsboro? Where are you from?
No, I'm a child of the world, actually. I was born in Massachusetts, but I've lived all over the place. I never had a place that I really called home. I lived in Willsboro longer than I've lived anywhere. And I used to come up here summers with a friend of mine, and I liked the place. And then back in '78, I met a girl. And she
Son
moved.
of a gun! Isn't that how it always starts?
Yeah. Yep. Well, she came down there and lived with me in southern New Hampshire for a while, and then we decided to move up here, get rid of the rat race. And so I've been up here since about '84.
There are a lot worse places to live.
Absolutely. And in fact, all my friends that come up here say, "Man, you got it made up here," and it's a great place to live. There's things you have to deal with, but I'd rather live here than down there and deal with the rat race.
Yeah, I'm with you. Chick, thanks so much for letting us into your world, and we can't wait to see you touch another one off
Well,
after a while.
We will. As soon as the boys give me the word, we'll let her go, and you'll hear a little bit.
I love it. Thanks a lot, Chick. Have a great day.
You too.
Good to meet you. I don't know how many of my actual words are getting into the microphone. I've been mixing it with a breeze today, and I notice we don't have a wind deflector on the microphone, but I hope you're hearing me okay. Standing next to me is Matt Booth, former Plattsburgh City Police Chief, who's also very much involved in history around here. Matthew, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Great. I looked in there and I expected Eddie Scullin to be speaking, and I saw you behind the microphone. You said you were his warm-up.
Warm-up act, yes. He's getting into the Valcour Bay Research Project, and I was getting into a little bit of the pre-education. The idea of when I started in diving, we were all hunter-gatherers, where everything we found we looked at on the bottom and brought back with us. And then it became a curiosity, and we are finding that through research and education, now we've lost that component of history. That important piece that we've come up with is now a curiosity instead of an artifact. I like to look at the project we're working on out here, and any project I've worked on, each little piece, each little artifact that we find is but a tile on the entire mosaic. By itself, it's neat, it's keen to look at, but when it's analyzed in the perspective of the entire site, in this case the battle site, it becomes much more significant. So truly the whole is actually built upon by the significance of each item that we recover. Each item tells a story. Each item puts a face on history. Somebody caused that to be there. Some person that has a name, that had a family, that had a life, caused it to be there. And we spend more time on land in the books than we do on the bottom doing the work.
And we can now, with on the bottom doing the work, we can rewrite a little bit of history. Now that we talked earlier about finding that exploded cannon, we know who stood behind the cannon when it exploded.
That's the type of information
fantastic.
we have when we paint the face on it. It becomes living history. You can touch it, you can feel it. Somebody was there, and now you know who that somebody is. And in this case, we believe it to be Lieutenant Rogers. And it just, you get goosebumps when you're on the bottom and you find something and you start to think about it, and it has a personal connection.
Well, when Frank taught me how to scuba dive many years ago, when diving equipment looked a little different than it did now, and the training was, okay, Gordy, jump now. That was my training. But we used to have an awful lot of fun, and as Frank says, you find a cannonball and you know you are the first human being to touch that cannonball in 200 years. How you can't help but be moved.
Well, it's an exhilarating experience being underwater to begin with, but then when you start to, as you say, be the first person in 200 plus years to touch an item, and now I have the ability, all of us in the diving community have the ability to bring that item back and share it with those people who are non-divers, to study that cannonball, to study that uniform button, to study that whatever we find, and paint a picture. We now have strong physical concrete evidence that we can write and rewrite history with, because every observer of a historical event views it through different eyes, through their own personal experiences, through their own personal knowledge. Certainly a gun crew member on the British vessels would view the same events differently than a gun crew member on an American vessel, or someone standing on shore, or a bumbling British naval officer who, in the weeks after the battles, constructed his own memoirs to defend his own position.
I'm laughing because we've seen it so many times.
Absolutely. History is portrayed through the recorder and the teller. Everybody has a different perspective on the same information.
Sometimes history is rewritten by things like you're doing.
Absolutely.
When we did some research and had some of the world's top people in Plattsburgh in a gym on the base a while back and plotting things out on the gym floor, we wrote a little bit of history before that weekend was finished. And that's what it takes, discovering one thing at a time. It's got to make your life very interesting. What else are you doing since you're retired?
Smiling much more.
I bet you are.
Enjoying my family much more.
I had forgotten that you were into diving. You've been doing it quite a while now.
32 or 3 years.
Have you really?
Yes, I have. Back in 1978, I was involved in another group. We actually were doing a similar type of work in Cumberland Bay on the sites of the Battle of Plattsburgh. And we were a group of about a dozen of us doing recreational diving, and we got into historical, archaeological type diving. We set up grid patterns out in Cumberland Bay, and we ultimately, after a period of a number of years where we were putting in as many as 4 or 5 dives a day, each of us.
No kidding.
We have amassed a collection of artifacts that are still being analyzed by the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. About 3 years ago, we transferred the collection there because it was the nearest appropriate display and research facility that existed. And we took over somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 or 2,600 items.
Wow.
Between everything from musket balls and musket flints to uniform buttons to pieces and intact pieces of pottery, on up through any number of things. And they're still looking at and analyzing and cataloging and doing the work on the things that we brought over to them.
Do you think it's important for us to get the message of all you've done and all these other people have done here out to the public? That seems to be a very important issue now as people are all of a sudden discovering the Battle of Valcour, discovering the Battle of Plattsburgh. I think it's good for
Discovering
everybody.
the Champlain Valley and the
Champlain
entire
Valley,
region.
which is the ultimate goal after all.
It is. It isn't just Plattsburgh or Virgins or Burlington or any other part of the lake. This is an entire region that we have to deal with. It goes from the first European who saw Lake Champlain, Samuel D., in 1603, and goes further. But there were a lot of people who lived and existed here before we came along. The indigenous populations, the natives, this was their corridor just as it became ours, and it was just as important to them as it became to the Europeans as they came through, and it's still an important corridor. We don't travel as much on the lake now. We have Interstate 87 or Interstate 89. It's an international area. It's so significant to the rest of the country. A lot of the early history that caused our nation to be what it is happened right here, within 5 miles of where we're standing right now.
That's why we are standing here right now. Calvin and I mentioned that before. Just right off where we're standing, between this small Gardner Island and the other island, Valcour Island. So many things have happened in history. It's fun just to look out there and let your imagination go to work, isn't it, Matt?
Well, we let our imagination go to work, and we get down on the bottom, we start looking at things and finding things, and now the hard work becomes evident. We have to spend the time researching. Well, what is it we found? What is it? What's the significance of this? What's it mean? And then again, recording that so that we can share it with people who aren't as fortunate to be able to get down there on the bottom.
It's kind of neat when you bring up the anchor from the Confiance or that exploded cannon. But just imagine if these are things that we've discovered recently. What else is down there?
Oh, it's
piles of stuff.
There's thousands of years of human existence on this lake, and there's going to be evidence of it down there. It's there. Some of it you can find by research. You look where your best chance of finding something is, and some of it is just happenstance. You swim to it, and there it is.
Finally, we're getting technology that enables us to locate things. Not too many years ago, it was pretty much hit and miss. And with limited resources, it was difficult to find really significant things. But now, there's technology that's on our side, and side scan sonar and things like that do make it easier to map this lake.
Well, that's true, and it makes it much easier to find certainly larger things, like the anchor. I don't think that was side scan that found that. I think they swam into it.
I know. I love it.
And the group I was involved with from 78 to about 86, like I say, we did hundreds of dives out there, and we never found that. It's a matter of today I'm swimming along, and tomorrow the water's more clear so that I can see what I missed yesterday. So there's untold numbers of artifacts out there that are just going to take a lot of work to find, and certainly the technology, as you refer to, makes it much easier to find them.
I just mentioned to Frank that there's a difference in the clarity of the water, the underwater in Lake Champlain, tremendous difference from when he and I used to dive back in the 60s to today, thanks to zebra mussels and other things. And but it's not like diving. It's a whole different ball game from diving in the beautiful crystal clear waters of the Caribbean, isn't it, huh?
I've done that too, yeah. We were in earlier.
It would be nice to see 600 or 800 feet down here, wouldn't it?
It would, and we were in Monday. We were diving out here, and the surface temperature was about 74, and the bottom temperature in 45 feet was 62 degrees. Well, I was talking with somebody who had a family member diving earlier today. The bottom temperature was 48 degrees.
See that?
So the water is flip-flopped with a strong south wind we've got today, and now the thermocline is there, and it wouldn't be fun spending an hour down there today. The lake changes from morning to afternoon, from Tuesday to Wednesday, and certainly the clarity changes too. It's just some days you can see 50 feet on the bottom, and some days you can see 4 feet on the bottom. So it's a very dynamic, constantly changing environment that we're in.
Have you done a lot of ocean diving?
Only on vacations. I get near the warm ocean. If I were to go to Maine, I probably wouldn't think too much about it.
Not at 56 degrees.
No, and I've had occasion to go to Florida 3 different times, and been able to dive there and also in the Virgin Islands. So it makes it tough to come back from that and dive in this, but it's still fun.
It's still an awful lot of fun, and we want to thank you for your tremendous interest in history and for your contribution to a lot of things. Every time we talk to people like you, we reinforce the fact that this is a pretty darn nice place to live and have fun at, right?
I'm nearly a native here, being 6th generation on both sides of my family. So I know no other place, and I've traveled quite a bit, and I've visited a lot of places, and I find no other place I'd rather be.
Yeah. You couldn't state it any better than that, could you? Matt Booth, thanks a lot. Have a great life.
I'm working at it. Thank you.
Me too.
Looks like Craig Russell's got a silencer on his gun. Lynn Wilkie and Craig Russell, reenactors.
The food is ready!
I don't know how many years ago it was that I first heard the voice of Eddie Scullin on the telephone. When did you become a trooper, Ed?
88.
Come on. 13 years?
Yep, 13 years in September.
Wow, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it also doesn't seem like 4 years since I was on the radio either.
Right, goes fast.
Where are you working now?
I'm working out of Plattsburgh. I'm doing the summers, I'm doing the boat patrol for the state police on Lake Champlain.
How's it going this year?
Great. It's been started out kind of slow. The boating season did, but with the weather, but with the heat, everybody's out there.
I noticed that over the last week or so, huh?
Well, everybody's been waiting for it.
So you've been a trooper since? No, it can't be true.
That's true, 1988.
And where did you start out your career?
I started in Plattsburgh. I did a short stint in Keysville, went to Dannemora for a few years and came back to Plattsburgh.
Make the tour, make the river
made the
run.
tour, yeah.
Back again. How did you get interested in diving? We talked to Matt Booth, a good friend, for a long time, and Matt's been diving for a long time. So have you.
I started diving at Plattsburgh State. I had a friend from Long Island that I roomed with. He was an avid diver since he was a kid. He got me interested in it. I took a course at SUNY with Dave Robertson.
Oh, yeah.
And from there, it just went on from there. And then once I got on the state police, I realized they had a dive team. I applied for a position with that and went through the courses, and I've been on the team for 12 years now.
What kind of duty is that? I mean, what kinds of things do you do?
We'll do anything from, I can't say we do a lot of rescue work, but if the opportunity's there, we'd certainly make the effort. We do mostly recovery work, victim recovery. We also do a lot of evidence recovery also.
Oh, that's true too. When you see a state police diving team, they aren't necessarily looking for bodies.
No, it's a great place. It's a common place for criminals to throw their weapons or their proceeds into the water where they think nobody will find them, and you try to prove them wrong.
Every now and again you do.
Right.
You go back to Prohibition days when there was a lot of stuff getting thrown overboard on Lake Champlain, right?
Yeah, and every now and then you'll find a crate of bottles too that'll tell you just that.
I know Frank Papps tried to drink one time, and it wasn't very good after all those years, believe me. So how about your interest in history and this historical diving? When did that start?
Well, that started a few years back. I picked up a copy of Sails and Steam, and you run into divers from the area all the time that if run into. It usually starts out as bottle collecting. You run into places where nobody's ever been, and where somebody threw something, you're the first to come on it. Well, some people have come on some artifacts. Piqued my interest a little bit. I started reading Sails and Steam, and what got me out here is I saw a depiction of the FAD map of the actual battle lines. We're encouraged to use our equipment, become familiar with it. We had a metal detector, so I thought I'd see if I could find where the American line was, and get some practice in at the same time, and I found a bigger chunk of the American line than I had bargained for.
Isn't it incredible?
Yeah, well, it sure is.
How would you describe that feeling?
It was disbelief at first because it was so far down in the silt that basically it was all by feel. And at first you're thinking, well, if I've definitely got something metal, and at first I thought it was a large ball, a mortar ball, but then I found that it was actually tubular, and I was thinking it was a piece of sewer pipe. But then I felt the flare of the muzzle, and then I actually put my hand in the bore, and then I realized that it was a gun.
And when was that? When did you find it?
That was July 15th of 1999.
And didn't bring it up till this year?
Not till this year, till June 30th of this year.
You've learned a lot about that cannon since you found it, haven't you?
Learned a lot about the cannon, learned a lot about history, learned a lot about the laws and the protection of artifacts and things of that sort. And everything that I've learned, we're trying to bring to everybody else. We actually got a lot of divers, local divers that have taken part in this, and hopefully we're going to make them all stewards. I mean, we have a great amount of people that have become just that, stewards of what's out there, and watching and protecting what's out there. And it used to be you ran into something, you brought it up because you were concerned somebody else would find it and wouldn't take care of it. Now you realize that you're really degrading that when you do that. You're taking away part of its value, because where it's at is a big portion of its worth.
How did you manage to find out who this sailor was that was standing behind that cannon when it blew up?
That went through our association with the Maritime Museum. They've been in existence for decades. They have a great collection of researchers. We found the initials on this cartridge box.
Was that what it was, the initials?
It was the initials on the cartridge box that I believe is what happened first. Was they were interested to find out whether or not they could find a connection with some research that's been done on the participants, if they could match up the initials. Art Cohen, talking to one of his researchers, George Quintal out of Maine, he's done a lot of research on the members of the Arnold's fleet and research battles of the Northern Campaign. When it was mentioned to him that we had an exploded cannon along with the cartridge box, clicked his memory of a pension record he had seen of a Jonas Holden.
Isn't that amazing?
It sure is. It's just everything just fell right into place. And because of that record, we know what ship he was on. Because we know what ship he was on, we know what size it was, because it was similar to Philadelphia, and they've done great detailed plans on those. We can actually plug it right into our master survey map, and we've actually been able to figure out where the vessel had moved while it was engaged during the Battle of Valcour.
Bring it right up to the present time, and it's just, like you said, you've learned a tremendous amount about history in this whole process.
Right, and it's a story that, like with Lieutenant Rogers, is written in stone. I mean, it's there. It's just a story it's been there for 225 years, and it just took the right combination to draw the whole thing together. And that's what the research project's all about, is to try to appreciate the full value for what we're finding and tie in the artifacts with the records and make it one complete story.
Those of us who are landlubbers can't wait to see the next headlines, because this project is by no means finished.
No, it's something if they want to, it's something my children will be doing, I'm sure, for a long time. There's a lot of area out there, and it's meticulous work. It takes a lot of time, but it's worth it. Taking the time and being careful and being meticulous. I mean, what we're finding out can be researched for years too. We can, as we learn more stories and we find out more things from historical documents, we can put it against what we're finding from our mapping out here and compare the two.
As we said with Matt and with Frank Pabst and others, sometimes finding these things will help history to be rewritten. Sometimes you find enough new things that change a little, underline a certain thing or change a page of history a little bit.
Well, then you had an intense battle here, and it didn't work out the way some people had planned either. So there might have been, some aspects of it that might not have been, really accurate at the time, purposely so. And not only that, in the heat of battle, it's hard to remember exactly where this occurred or that occurred, or even that some things even occurred at all.
And everybody's got a different perspective on the battle,
Sure.
Depending on who writes it down, what side. what your rank was and who's behind you're trying to cover and a lot of other things.
Exactly.
You know, Eddie, you've been involved in this aspect of history for a long time, but where did you come from when you first moved here?
I'm originally from Western New York. I've actually lived here 21 years now. I finished high school at Saranac. It was my senior year.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Dansville, New York, south of Rochester, about 40 miles.
I know very well where it is. Everybody's proud of the area they come from. But this area, you know, I was transplanted here in 1961, and I'm proud to call it my home because all you got to do is just take one swing of the camera around here and look out at that beautiful lake and say, yeah, this place is a great place to live.
Oh, certainly is. I don't think I'll ever leave, and actually I'm a resident of Valcour most of the year.
Oh yeah, so, that's pretty neat place out there with a lighthouse.
Dive there, camp there, beautiful place.
Now you were in there talking for a long time today, at least an hour. What kinds of things were you showing the audience in there?
Basically, I tried to walk them through the progress of the survey, and it has been a learning experience. And right from the start, is regarding the laws and the proper procedures and things of that sort, in doing this kind of research. And then also, it's just been very productive. In 1999, we were coming across personal effects of the crew members. And then in 2000, we were coming across portions of the gun. And it's just a tip of the iceberg as far as what we've learned, because this stuff is over at the Maritime Museum. It's going through electrolysis, and it's being cleaned, it's being preserved. They're going to find markings. They're going to have their researchers looking at it. We're going to find out a whole lot more.
Hopefully, Ed and Calvin and I will lock ourselves in a room for a couple hours someday and go through all of this footage on a one-on-one basis to show for our viewers. It's nice that it's all chronicled. Who did all your camera work and your still photography?
Jerry Forkey's done a lot of still photography of the actual operations, topside stuff. I have an underwater camera, video camera. It's digital. I've done work with it. Steve Nye's done work with it. Danny Carpenter. We've also had Doug Jones from a local dive shop who's done some video work. We're hoping to get, he's got some great video that maybe we can talk to him about. And it's just been a collection of all the talents of all the volunteers that we have.
It's nice to have it chronicled, though, isn't it? So you can go back and relive it all over again and share it with an audience like today.
And to be honest with you, Cordy, if we hadn't, there's a lot of it I probably would have forgotten because it's just been so busy. It's been so busy.
It's terrific.
It's great. It's worth it.
And you're doing this all because you enjoy doing it.
That's a simple reason, and because it's a good thing to do. It needs to be said. There are a lot of people that went through a lot for us, and a lot of families that went through a lot for us. And the story of Lieutenant Rogers, his wife Molly, and their losses are things that they get buried in time. And this is something that we've been able to bring back out, so it's nice.
So the people in the North Country are learning a lot more about the Battle of Valcour and its significance and the struggle for freedom in this nation. How do we get that message out globally? I mean, we're trying. We're getting a few headlines every now and again. The raising of that cannon, stuff like that helps.
Yeah, I think it does, but I think it's probably more important that we just worry about it now just for the sake that it's an important thing to do. And I know that we've tried to develop tourism in the area, and that our history is a way to do that. But I think that's a byproduct, and I think that's something that will happen when we do the work that we need to do to secure it first. And it's not just something that happened here in Plattsburgh, it's something that happened all the way down the lake, and that's what we really need to tie into is a regional goals and regional cooperation, where what we promote is the Champlain Valley, and I think we're coming to that.
Absolutely terrific. Ed, thanks so much for all you've done. We can't wait to see the next chapter.
Okay, my pleasure. I'll be glad to show it to you.
Eddie Scullin. Like so many other people now, with the advent of the modern computer and the internet, I like to surf the web every once in a while, and some time back I came across a really neat website called the Lake Champlain and Lake George Historical Site, and started a correspondence with Jim Millard, send him a little note and complimented him on the site, and you think nobody ever gave him a compliment before. Well, you have done a wonderful job with that site, Jim.
Thank you, Gordy.
And
Thank
isn't
you.
it a good day here today?
This is a wonderful day. I'm really pleased with the turnout. This is such an exciting event. It's about time that the Battle of Valcour got the attention it deserved. Ed has done a wonderful job with the presentation. I just hope we can continue to get the word out to people just how important the historical events were that happened in this area.
Ed said, when you said, how do we go globally? He said, God, I forgot to mention the website. And that's why we got you over here today. How did this beautiful little website get started? Let's go back and get a little of your history. First of all, where are you from originally?
Well, I live directly across the lake here. I live on the western shore of South Hero. I'm right up on the other end of Valcour Island. I have lived and breathed local history. Basically, my family has been about 6 or 7 generations over in New Hampshire Grants on the other side of the lake. But I have just loved the history of this area for a long time. I work at St. Michael's College in Colchester. I do computers for a living.
Oh, there you go.
And the website basically is just the natural merging of my passion for history and what I do. And basically back in 1992, Dr. Russell Valcour came out with his incredible book on sales and steam. And I happened to be in the hospital at the time. And the book was given to me as a gift at a very, very difficult time for me. And the bottom line is one thing led to another. And as soon as I had the opportunity, I put the website together, and it's just one thing after another. It's become very, very popular. I can't get over it.
It's really pretty exciting. You keep adding stuff all the time.
I tell my good friend Roger, I tell Ed, the rest of my life I'll be doing this website. I haven't even scratched the surface yet. There's just so much to be written about, so much for people to learn. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Literally right now I'm up to about 2,000 visitors a week.
Are you really?
Absolutely.
That's
and they
pretty
keep
good,
coming.
you know.
They keep coming. I'm very fortunate that a lot of colleges, libraries, educational institutions are linking to it. One of my most exciting things for me is to have school teachers, educators, and school kids using this site on a regular basis. It's a heavy responsibility because the information's got to be right. But it's a real labor of love for me.
Do people bother to give you personal comments like I did?
Yeah, Gordy, that's what keeps me going.
When you worked hard at something, you deserve to be complimented on it. That's because it takes a lot of hard work. That stuff just doesn't appear.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been just as good for me as for anybody else. People have been so good to me. Ed has honored me with allowing me to be the official site for his project. It's so exciting for me to be able to have that featured on there. I've been able to work with people like Art Cohen, Phil Lord from the New York State Museum. It's just wonderful. John Tompkins from the Clinton County Historical Association. The people I have come to know and meet. I finally get to meet my hero, Dr. Russell Valcour. It's been so good for me. I can't get over it. It's a real blessing for me too.
Well, let's tell people what the website is so they can find it today.
It's about as easy as you can possibly be. You want to just type in www.historiclakes.org.
That's easy enough.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Gordy, so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Bill Rowe?
Yeah, you expect. Bill's got his earphones on. He expected that. Are we rolling here, buddy boy? Come on over here. Oh yeah, come on over here. Russ Valcour, I didn't mean to interrupt your lunch, but I already finished mine, so I don't care. How are you, my friend?
Good.
Great to see you again. Nice little piece in our local paper about your update of your book.
Yeah, it was a very nice article. I appreciated it.
Let's tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I did a revision of, for the last 2 years, I've been working on a revision of Sales and Steam in the Mountains. And I had about 10 more years since the first edition to do research, which included research for 2 more books. And I wanted to, integrate it in this book, a lot of the new research. And of course, over 10 years has been substantial archaeology.
Oh boy.
And I had the opportunity to do new research on one of my sabbaticals, and also to go to the Huntington Library in California that had the original papers, the Loudon papers and the Abercrombie papers from the French and Indian War. So that added some significant original sources to it. And it was fun in California too.
I bet you it was.
In the winter.
I imagine it wasn't all work and no play. So you had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now you got the new book out, and it was really interesting. We've interviewed a number of people here today who are involved in this Valcour project, and right to the man and woman, they say Russ is the guy that inspired us with his book. Now, this is a big load for you to carry, so. No, isn't it nice to work so hard at something and to have it interesting enough so that people develop kind of the same passion that you have?
Well, I really appreciate that people thought of me, but there were people before me. There were people that Frank Papps, for example, when I came up here in 1968 diving, he inspired me, telling me about some of these things and telling me where some of the wrecks were.
Yeah.
They weren't, of course, gunboats, but I used to go out with some of his divers, and we'd explore some of the wrecks to see if they were in fact related to the Revolutionary War. So, there were a lot of friends that I had up here that were, inspired me to continue researching this and writing about this and enjoying it.
It's really great.
And I won't be the only one. I mean, there's plenty of people that are going to be on me. History is not static. There's always new research to be done. For example, just the research in the 1950s, not that long ago, but a lot of people haven't researched the newspapers when they brought up, for example, some of these things to really get the full story of some of the salvage efforts and that sort of thing. So the story goes on, and there's still a lot of room for, as we're seeing with the archaeological research on the survey out here, a lot of new stories to be told.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's fun, and I'm glad I'm just a small part of it.
It's exciting for laymen, but it's exciting for people like you who've kind of made this your life. I can't imagine what it was like for you before you discovered Lake Champlain.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of the things that I did. My brother got me into scuba diving. He got me into surfing and a lot of other things. So I have a lot of interest, and but this is close to my heart right here.
Are you still teaching, Russ?
Oh yeah. I look too old for you to be teaching.
No.
Oh no. No, I'm still at Westfield State College. In fact, it was when Fred Woodward was the president of my college, is here today, and I enjoy teaching. I teach American economic history and European economic history, so I'm able to use some of the historical background here.
Well, isn't it nice to come up here to this spot, which is historical in itself,
It really
and
is.
to see this much interest being generated in something that's happening way beneath the waves out there? It's pretty cool.
I am. I'm really excited about it because when I used to come up here in the 60s, there was some interest. But I think there's much more interest than local people have, and nationally. This story of the cannon made the national news, and rightly so. This isn't just regional history. This is our national heritage, and really deserves wider attention.
And the story of the Confiance anchor, that wasn't too shabby.
That was a great story, and I think there's a lot more stories to be told. The Spitfire, it's still under study, but there will be something done with it one way or the other that will renew the interest in this.
So when did the book revision come out?
About 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
so it's pretty fresh.
It's still hot, baby.
Yeah.
Have you signed a couple of copies today?
Yeah, I was, not today, but I signed at the Heritage Days in Westport.
Did you really?
Yeah, a couple boxes of books. It was good.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Are you working on any other
No.
projects right now? No? Gotta take a little time.
Right. Right. That was a lot of work. It does may not seem so, but to organize
it
it,
does.
get it all in there.
It's a lot of work.
It was a lot
Especially when
because
you're
I was
writing
working.
about history.
And I was working at the same time, trying to do it at nights. And luckily last summer, not luckily, but it was a rainy summer, and I was able to get a lot done last summer.
It's hard to get anything done except
I know.
get out in the sun this summer.
You have to be
It's been so
disciplined,
wild.
but it was raining.
I've never had any discipline. I'm glad somebody did. Doctor, thanks so much,
Okay,
Russ.
thanks a lot.
Have a great day and a great life.
Okay.
Good to talk
All
to you,
right,
buddy.
nice seeing you again.
When he walked down over the hill a couple of hours ago, Calvin said to me, that looks like a Connecticut peddler. And sure enough, Stan Ransom is the Connecticut peddler. How are you, Stanley?
I'm just fine, thanks, Gordy.
It's fun to be connected with an event like this, isn't it?
It's very interesting, very much fun, and I'm so glad that we're doing this today.
Stanley has done research into all kinds of songs and poems from here to Long Island, and you're discovering new stuff all the time, aren't you?
That's true. I keep writing or finding new songs connected with the history of this area. There's so much history, and a lot of it's connected with music of the area.
Now, you found, did you write this song about the Battle of Valcour Bay?
Yes, I wrote this song to illustrate that Benedict Arnold at the beginning of the war was a very important person. In fact, Washington called him one of the most sensible officers he ever had. Wow. So he was a very good officer, a good strategist, very skilled, and he could lead his men very well. And his actions in our first naval battle here on Lake Champlain gave us a really good start to the American Revolution.
When did you write the song?
Oh, I think it must have been about 10 years ago or so.
No kidding, I thought it was
while
brand
back.
new.
No, I've been had this around for a while, and once in a while I've performed it. But this now is the occasion, I think, for something like the Battle of Valcour Bay.
I think it's a perfect way to end our wonderful program, our little corner program out here by the Valcour Education Center, not far from this beautiful old boathouse. So here's the Connecticut peddler, Stan Ransom, with the Battle of Valcour Bay.
Our first naval battle was not on the Main, was instead on the waters of old Lake Champlain, when our forefathers vowed to set themselves free and contend with Great Britain for their liberty. Derry down, 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 Derry down. Now these brave men determined they'd never be beat, with Benedict Arnold commanding the fleet. They'd heard of his prowess on Danbury Plain, where he charged at the British and rode out again. Derry down, 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 Derry down. Now General Prescott avowed he would take a small fleet of ships and move south on the lake. To join with Lord Howe was his principal call, then to split up our forces and conquer them all. Derry down, 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 Derry down. But Benedict Arnold soon learned of the chance to hold up the British upon their advance. With the help of his men he would therefore proceed to build some bateau with all possible speed. Down, 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 Derry down. At length our first navy was launched from the shore, with the bark Royal Savage a-going before. They drew up in a line and decided to moor on the westernmost side of the Isle of Valcour. Derry down, 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 Derry down. Then General Prescott advanced down the lake, expecting that Arnold he'd soon overtake, determined to conquer our patriot band and show them Great Britain was still in command. Derry down, 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 Derry down. As they sailed past the Isle of Valcour's southern tip, they caught sight of our decoy, a fast-sailing ship. When the British advanced to the mouth of the bay, they discovered our ships all drawn up for the fray. Down, 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 Derry down. Then the battle commenced and the cannonballs flew, and it took many a toll of our ships and their crew. Though our men fiercely fought with cannon and gun, the British kept sinking our ships one by one. Down, 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 Derry down. Now the bark Royal Savage was wounded full sore. It was burned and then sank on the edge of the shore. But Arnold transferred to a ship close at hand, And from this new ship he continued command. Derry down, 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 Derry down. As darkness was falling, the general's fleet drew up in a line to prevent our retreat. But taking advantage of the cover of night, Arnold slipped through their lines and sailed south in his flight. Down, 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 Derry down. To Ticonderoga he sailed with his crew. The ships he commanded were pitifully few. He regrouped his forces, preparing to meet a second assault by the general's fleet. Derry down, 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 Derry down. But Prescott now thought that the year was far gone and abandoned his plan to proceed further on. Fearing the problems that winter might bring, he decided to wait till the following spring. Down, 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 Derry down. The people who know say that Arnold's retreat was more of a victory than a defeat. While some have forgotten, still others do say that Benedict Arnold was a hero that day. Down, 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 Derry down.
Talk about story songs. There is the story of the Battle of Valcour. How many verses? About 10 verses.
Quite a few, yes.
Wonderful.
To use a lot to describe this important battle.
It's really neat. Has that been recorded yet?
I don't believe it has.
By you, I mean.
Wait a minute. Yes, it has. On my Songs of Lake Champlain.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Might as well give a little plug for the CD.
That's right.
How many tapes and CDs have you done now?
Right now I've done 6, and I've got another one already completed, ready to be duplicated, on the Battle of Plattsburgh, music and songs of the War of 1812. So that'll be certainly done by the beginning of September.
That had to be fun putting that together.
Oh, that's about 5 or 6 years research on that, looking up all the old songs and stories and poems, and there's a tremendous amount of material out there just on the War of 1812 and Plattsburgh.
Is there no end to this peddling of old music?
I don't think so, and I understand they're going to be reviving the French and Indian War any time now.
And you'll be ready, huh?
Absolutely, I've got songs all ready for that.
Dan Ransom, you're a good friend for a long time and a great friend of the North Country. Thanks for all the happiness you spread around.
Well, thank you for all the good work that you and Cal are doing. I really appreciate it.
We do have fun.
Yeah.
There is much more to come. As you know, even in an hour-and-a-half presentation on our little corner, we can't begin to cover the topic, and we wouldn't think of doing it if we were able. What we try to do is inspire some of our viewers to learn a little more about American history, and this is where American naval history started, right out here where the camera is showing you on Valcour Island in the Battle of Valcour. The brand new American Navy fought a battle that was tremendously significant toward the future of our great nation and our nation's freedom. You heard a lot of the information in Stanley's song. You've heard a lot of people talk about it today. But that brand new Navy is where it all began. And look at the tremendous history we have behind us here in the year 2001. We're recording this program on August 12th, 2001. In October, at the actual date of the Battle of Plattsburgh, or Battle of Valcour 225 years ago, there will be other activities, and I will imagine there'll be a few sweaters and coats around at that time too. We thank you all for viewing this program. We urge you to support it in any way you can. If you know anyone who'd like to underwrite this program in any way, contact Calvin Castine at Hometown Cable in Champlain, New York. Just look it up in the telephone book. Talk to your friends about this show. Let us know that you enjoy it, and it'll inspire us to do it again another time. A reminder that we've already convinced Eddie Scullin, the diver who made the most presentations here today, to stop with us sometime and show us some of the information that, about the Valcour project, about the raising of that exploded cannon from the Battle of Valcour, and about many other things that they plan to do in research right here in our beautiful Lake Champlain. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.